about to hear a revolution in talk radio. Liberty Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio, America's libertarian voice, broadcasting from our studio in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to around the world. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, and this is your antidote to popular talk radio. This broadcast is being brought to you live on Friday morning, the day after Christmas, December 25th, 2014. It is now 8:01 a.m. Central Time in what was once known as the good old USA. During our live broadcast, we invite you to call 646-652-4620 or our toll-free number at 888-773-4496. Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government now before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, and our liberty. But to do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. And this program is just about that. But before we get started, I'd also like to remind our listeners to subscribe to our reminder service by visiting our website and clicking on the subscribe icon. We have a new icon. It's a real big button as soon as you get on libertytalkradio.com. Do so you'll be advised of the programs. We don't sell your name, and we don't send you any other extraneous solicitations or anything like that. And for those of you who tweet, the Liberty Talk Radio Twitter address is at Liberty Joe. Now on to our show. Folks, last week we talked somewhat about a meeting that I attended, I should say, and the subject was quite strange. It was about American ignorance. Not stupidity, folks. Don't get offended. Ignorance. And when we say ignorance, we mean people who want to ignore facts or don't really want to think. They're too accepting. They take what they've been told, they digest it, and then the worst thing they can do is they regurgitate it constantly. And there seems to be a high level of ignorance. Again, not stupidity. We're not dumber than any other people in the world or anything like that. But that we seem to be so accepting today of what we hear because it sounds so good. It sounds tantalizing almost, and it sounds kind. It sounds humane. And yet, when you start peeling all of the layers off of what is being said, you find out that what is the true meaning of what is being said and what it really is are two different things. Now, this program is just about that. You notice we don't talk much about what the president said or a congressman or voting and what's occurring in current events, because all of that to me is noise. All it does is it distracts us from thinking, from understanding how we should think about certain issues. Now, let me admit something. I have been accused. I was accused on more than one occasion, and I kid you not. I know you're going to find this difficult to believe, but on more than one occasion, I have been accused of being intelligent, of being smart. That I am not, I can guarantee you. I really am not smart, and I can prove it because, see, my wife and I can go to a movies, and the plot may have a plot, and it may be one of these intrigue movies and all that, and I'll be concentrating on it, and I'll walk out, and my wife will ask me a question. She said, well, wasn't that interesting the way, and then she'll repeat what happened at the movies, and she'll interpret for me what occurred. I missed it all. I said, how do you do that? I always leave the movie saying, I'm not really sure what I watched. So I'm not smart. I want you to know that. And in fact, if you want to know if I'm not smart, ask my wife. I mean, every time we go to the movies, I have to ask her, really, what happened? I really don't dig it. Now, I watched Godzilla. Godzilla, I sort of understood a little bit, but not, I didn't enjoy it. But that I Lost World, things like that. The Walking Dead. I can sort of get those movies. But the more difficult movies, I have lots of difficulty with. And the reason why I say that is that I get accused of being, smart or intelligent or knowledgeable, but people are wrong, and I appreciate. Believe me, I appreciate the compliment. But what really we should focus on is really why I think the way I do. I think the way I do is because I'm always thinking. I'm always pondering. And let me give you an example. And this is going to sound very strange. But several years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even more, I listened to a speech by a Harvard a professor of ethics. The guy was outstanding. And he presented to the audience, and the audience, it comprised of hundreds of people. I can't say how, but very, very large auditorium. Hundreds of people, maybe even 1,000 people. An ethical question. I'm not going to get into it because that ethical question could take an entire hour just to go through. But he asked an ethical question, and it was whether or not, under these circumstances, you would sacrifice, one life to save three. Now, I won't get into the particulars because, if I did it, again, it would take too much time and we'd spend the whole program, we'd never get through it. But about 80 or 90% of the people said, of course, they would sacrifice the one for the three. And yet, I was the 10% that said, no, I wouldn't. Now, I felt that I was correct in my thinking, but I didn't know why. Now, here's my point. Here's the talking point, is that just 2 weeks ago, while I was driving, it dawned on me why I made that decision. You see, it took me over 5 years because in back of my mind, I pondered that ethical question. Now, and quite frankly, there was no really right answer. But I said, but I couldn't figure out why I made the decision that I did. I felt comfortable with it, but I had no reason. And this is what happens when people make comments on television, about a particular event, especially things that are occurring now with the ethnic problems in Ferguson, Missouri, and stuff like that. People make comments, but they won't go past the comment. They won't tell you why, what their reasoning is, what the logic is, even if it hurts. But I started to think, and it dawned on me why I thought the way I did, or I made the decision that I did. And it took me over 5 years, but it dawned on me. And I think the reason, again, I go back to, I'm not really smart, but I'm always thinking. And things bother me that make too much sense. Because I always know there's something wrong somewhere, There's always something wrong somewhere. All right, let me give you, I'm going to give you an example, and this may insult many people, all right? We have a holiday we call Christmas. And when you think about that holiday and how it came about, it's kind of strange because, first of all, there is a question within the religious community, really, the date of Christ's birth. I mean, there's no one can guarantee or prove that he was born on December 25th, number one. And so we picked a date. There is a date that is picked. Now, why, I don't know, but I know there's been a lot of controversy regarding his birth. Now, there's not only been a lot of controversy regarding about the date of his birth, but there's been a lot of controversy about his birth period, So you have all of this going on. And yet, our government sees fit to dedicate one day, as Christmas, initially, in reference to, the birth of Christ. That's what happened. Now, I have no problem with religion. You believe whatever you want. I'm not going to disagree with you. Go, girl, go type thing. But where I do have a problem is when the government You know, when you look at the Constitution, here it is, right here, I carry it with me, Constitution, says that, you know, there is a division between church and state. In other words, the state does not interfere with church. Right? They don't make decisions regarding religious fractions or ideology. And here, what the government is doing is saying we are going to take one day out of the year and make this a religious holiday in reference to a person who was born in this particular religion, you know, through this particular religion, or that started this particular religion. Now, when you think about that, again, I have nothing against Christmas and I have nothing against the Christian religion or anything like that. What I do have a problem with is the government interfering in religion. Now, when they did that, they did something very interesting. Right? They said to all the employers around in the United States that this is a day that we are declaring as a holiday. Now I have a problem again. Now, do I like holidays? You bet I do. You know, do I like to stay home and just watch a few football games? You bet I do. That's not the point. It's not the point whether it makes me happy or not. The point is this. The government is telling businesses that you will give your employees that day off. The government, our servants, are telling the productive aspect of society, you will close your businesses those days because we are telling you, you must give those employees that day off. Now, they say, well, if you have to stay open, you know, and you'd be a fool if you do because you'll look like a real slime ball if you do. But if you do stay open, you have to pay them by the time and a half or double time. Now, for the life of me, again, this has nothing to do with being against. It could be any holiday. It could be, I don't pick the holiday. It could be Easter. It could be, I don't know, what other holidays we have, President's Day. It could be any day. Any time where the government, it could have been 4th of July. Let's take a neutral day, the 4th of July. You know, we all get off the 4th of July. And we have the 4th of July weekend. Usually we're on Thursday and we have 4 days, you know, off and the whole bit. I love it, you know. But is that the role of government? Well, the answer is no. In fact, it's unconstitutional what the government does. The government is telling me if I have to stay open that day, I don't pay my employees $15 an hour. I have to pay them $22.50 an hour. Now, where in the Constitution, or even implied in the Constitution, does it give the government for a right to, number one, establish a religious holiday? Nada, right? Where does it give the right of the government to tell businesses you have to pay your employees time and a half or double time for that particular day? And where does it say in the Constitution that people can take off and be unproductive? Now, it all, again, if you're a non-thinking person, it all sounds good. It sounds just really nice. Really like this. It's really nice. Boy, nice. What a benevolent government we have. But when you think about it, it's wrong. The whole thing is wrong. Now, what's really interesting about Christmas, I mean, I'm going to pick on that holiday in particular, is that it is not a very good holiday in many respects. Friends of mine who are doctors will tell you that during the Christmas holidays, their business booms. They can't see enough patients. Because everyone gets ill. Every ill in the book comes to fruition around this time of year. There's something about this holiday that literally makes people sick. People get depressed. Depression is rampant around the Christmas holiday. Well, if it's a time for love and family and cheer, why is it psychologically the worst time of year for people? That has nothing to do with the first part of my conversation. I'm just throwing that in for thought. Food for thought, as they say. You know, what was really interesting is that since my open heart surgery that I had about 6 months ago, my blood pressure has been really low. In fact, sometimes too low. I've had readings of 97 over 54. I mean, that's not really high blood pressure at all. You know, my blood pressure is 150, 160. You know, I took my blood pressure the other day, a couple of days before Christmas. It was 180. I almost flipped out. Double what it normally is. Now, it has since come down a little bit. Now it's in the normal range, but still higher than normal. Now, I haven't had blood pressure like that in 6 months. And yet, here we are a couple of days before Christmas, and my blood pressure is ballistic. And I don't know why that happens. All right, I guess I'm getting off my point. But my point is this, is that the government has no right to establish any holiday. And this is the way we should think about it. We should be on the streets rioting, saying, you have no right, government, telling us when and where and how we celebrate our religious holidays. But yet we don't. We accept it because we are a non-thinking public. Now, it extends much further than that. In fact, it's a quarter of the hour. This is going to be a short program, folks. We're going to get back to our normal broadcasting schedule of Monday and Thursday starting next week. We have installed a new computer system. We have new acoustics in the room and the whole bit. Hopefully this helps a little bit. But just hold on. We'll be right back. We have we'll take our break now, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Political talk derived from a historical perspective. Not always palatable, but good food for thought. Pure libertarian talk with host Joe Cristiano. LibertyTalkRadio.com.
Express Test is your go-to company for on-site occupational health testing services. That's right, we said on-site. That means we will meet you at your facility for a free health and occupational safety consultation. Express Test specializes in hearing conservation, respiratory protection, and employee safety. We can help you establish viable programs tailored to your business and employee needs. For your free consultation, call 918-743-2929 or visit us at expresstest.com. That's 918-743-2929 or expresstest.com. Do you find yourself asking, what did you say? Aaron Cristiano of Ranch Acres Audiology has over 25 years of experience helping patients just like you.
Hearing requires conservation. We need to be aware and we need to be responsible for our own hearing health.
Understand more with a little help from Ranch Acres Audiology. Call 918-749-7711. That's 918-749-7711 to learn more. We'd like to thank attorney Constance Squires for her support of Liberty Talk Radio. If you want a comprehensive way to affordably avoid legal issues, call Constance Squires. For a free consultation, call 918-254-9283 or go online at isthyWillDone.com.
This isn't your typical talk radio show. This is Liberty. Liberty Talk Radio.
Folks, we're back. This is Joe Cristiano. You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. We've just been talking about thinking and how the lack of thinking really breeds ignorance. And this program attempts to steer people, to make people at least think about thinking. It's not a matter of agreeing or disagreeing, but provided that you think and you give a good answer. When they interview people in Ferguson, Missouri about the shootings, I don't mind if people have a different opinion of that, but when they say, Black Lives Matter, and that's their answer to every question, you say, you're not thinking, you're just repeating, right? I talked about Christmas and how the government should have absolutely nothing to do with Christmas. There should be no Christmas holiday, promulgated by the government. Nor should there be any holiday promulgated by the government. Now you say, well, that we have representatives in Congress and they represent us and they voted for it, if you buy into that, and that's the way things work, then you buy into the trillions of dollars of debt that we have, that they are representing us. In other words, the $250 trillion that we owe, that are on the books, long-term and short-term, is all because we wanted it and our representatives voted according to our wishes. Now, that's not true. I know that's not true. So let's start thinking about how we're going to get out of this. Let me give you an example. Public pensions, or most pensions, but let's talk about public pensions for a second. Most countries around the world are in a economic crisis. And one of the main reasons is that people get jobs with the government work for 15 or 20 years and then are eligible to retire with a very high percentage of their pay for the rest of their life. Well, just think if someone at 17, 18 years old gets a job with the government, right, and they work 20 years. Now the guy is, let's say he's under 40 years old, right, and let's assume for a second the guy's in good health, he lives to be 85. Right? From 40 to 85 is 45 years. He's going to get, let's say, 75% or 50% or sometimes 100%, right, of his pay. Now, how many years can you do this before you go totally bankrupt? And now governments are saying, hey, we can't pay these pensions, and people are taking to the street. Now, who do you blame? Well, people blame the government. I don't blame the government at all. I mean, I do blame the government, but they take a minor portion of the blame. The blame goes to the people because the person actually believes that they're going to get something for nothing. You know, when something seems to be too true, you know, it usually is, and it always is. Now, anybody, any thinking person who says, hey, I'm going to get this job with the government, which means I don't really have to hustle, work hard, produce anything. I don't have to prove myself. I could probably never get fired unless I blow up a building or something like that. I'd probably never, even then they'll probably pay me off, So I have a job guarantee for life where I don't have to produce anything. And then after a few years, the government's going to pay me for staying home. Wow, what a deal. Sign me up. Now, when that game comes to an end, when that merry-go-round stops turning around, people get all excited, take to the street and says, I want what is due me. Now, they're right in that it is due them because it was promised to them. But if they think of what they were getting into, they would think differently today. However, people don't think. They see something attractive, they take it, and then they want it. They want it, they want it, they want it. They want with what is rightfully theirs. Now, anybody who would take a job as a public in the public sector with a good pension, to me, I don't have much respect for. Why? Well, because you're not producing anything. You're a drain on society. You belong to a union. You get top pay. Benefits you can't match the benefits anywhere in the world, And then you retire early. And I met this one guy at the dog park, had 3 pensions. 3 pensions. Only one of which was a private company pension. 2 were public pensions. This guy made a fortune. He was a couple of years older than I was making a fortune, did not have to work. Now, when the government finally goes bankrupt and says we can't pay it anymore, he should be upset. He says, hey, you promised, and he's right. But was there any logic in taking those pensions in the first place? Do you really, what about the person who works in a private company, works very hard in a factory, 8, 12 hours a day, with the minimum of benefits, and then retires on Social Security? Where's the fairness in that? Because, see, the public pension is not public. It's really private because it's coming from private citizens. In other words, someone's taking the easy way out, and they're going to make their neighbor pay for it. Now, their neighbor that's paying for it may work in a factory, worked as behind off, and gets the minimum amount, may get no pension at all, right? Then it relies on Social Security, which is a minimum amount of money to live on, after working 40 or 50 years, right? But the money that's being sucked out of his paycheck is going to those people who never produced anything and worked for a short period of time because they had a public pension. I am against all pensions. Now, if you have a private pension and you negotiate with someone privately, all right, that's a different story. That's between you and the employer. Because that money's coming from no one. Where it's coming from is the profits of the business. And that business has to stay in business. And the only way to stay in business is to be competitive. And if that person is deserving of a pension and makes the company profitable and competitive, no problem. I have no problem with that. Although companies now are not even paying pensions. They're realizing that they're falling into the same malaise that the public pensions are, in that they can't afford to pay people. They thought people at 65 would die, back in the old days. 65, you were gone. Well, now, they say 80 is the new 30. Or 30 is the new 80, or whatever, however the expression goes. In other words, people are living much longer. So people, the actuary tables that said that, well, if a person starts collecting after 65, if they retire at 65 and they live to 70, they'll be paying a pension for 5 years. Well, they're not paying a pension for 5 years anymore. They're paying a pension for 20 years, sometimes 30 years. And now companies are not offering pensions, but they offer to contribute to someone's 401k plan, and that's minimal. And people are sort of getting upset, saying, geez, we're not doing right by the employees anymore. That's not right. Hey, listen, I'm an employee. I have a pension from a major company, right? Not much. In fact, it's very, very small. But, it's something. And I worked there for 25 years. But I worked. I mean, it wasn't one of these fluff jobs where I did nothing. And I produced something. And I'm not in agreement that that's what the company owes me for the rest of my life, but that was the terms of agreement. I couldn't break it if I wanted to. But if this pension was coming out of the pocket of my neighbor, then I would object to it. But I wouldn't do it in the first place, because the person who's receiving the pension should have thought of that in the first place and said, this is not fair, this is not right. And there's no way this country could afford it. I want out. But no, they buy themselves into the system and then they riot. And they want my money to continue their lifestyle where they not only did produce nothing while they were employed, where they're producing nothing after they're employed. So public pensions, unconstitutional. Holidays, unconstitutional. The reason for this broadcast this morning, which is it's almost over now, I said I'll only be for a half hour, is not to be controversial or to be in your face. But the reason for this broadcast is so that you will take each issue and start thinking about the issue, not about Republican, Democrat, left, right, conservative, progressive, whatever. Forget about all of that. What is right? And what we are doing is not right. And because of that, our dollar is worth less and less and less every year because they have to print more and more and more to pay for all of these all of these debts that we incur, military and otherwise. I have friends in the military that have benefits up the kazoo. It's incredible what they have. And when they were in the military, if they were an officer, they lived in, just phenomenal surroundings. All over the world. For what? For our safety? I don't think so. For world dominance? Maybe so. I want people to start thinking. And this is what this program is all about. Now, send me your comments to comments at libertytalkradio.com. And what I'll do is if you want me to, I'll answer you on the air. I'll invite you to call in. And I'll invite you to the studio. Come on over, and we'll hash it out. But it really upsets me that we don't discuss the core problems of the issue. Just like that problem that I had with that ethical issue. And after 5 years, I said, bing! It dawned on me why I thought that way. I want people to start thinking. It's a lot of work. It's almost a headache, but it means you got to turn the TV off, read good stuff, and really think, and not be afraid to say, I was wrong. Because when you start thinking, you realize all the belief systems that you had, that you held dear, that this is the right thing, you find out that many of them are not true. Some may be, but many are not true. And no one wants to admit to themselves that, geez, for the past 32 years, I've been wrong. No one wants to do that. Unfortunately, I have become very accustomed to that. I do that almost every day. So when people say, Joe, boy, you're intelligent. No, don't go down there. In fact, quite on the contrary. If I was intelligent, I wouldn't be going through all this in the first place, And one of these days when I leave a movie theater, I don't have to turn around to my wife and say, I didn't get that, which is what happens to me all the time. Okay? All righty. Well, this is the end of tonight's broadcast, and I'm going to play a song. This is my son's song, by the way. Here we go. This is the end of today's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the financial support. We'd like to thank you for listening in. Folks, you can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. With that, until next time, I'm Joe Cristiano. This is Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well. Stay tuned.